biggest and the best independent radio station out there.
When we first entered the alternative media scene in 2009, we were really taken aback by the amount of infighting, backbiting, fear-based reporting, and ego-driven personalities. That's when we knew we had to set ourselves apart and set a new standard in broadcasting. And thus, TFR was conceived as a listener-supported station with no corporate or outside influence and limited commercial interruptions.
You can support our efforts by signing up for a VIP membership at truthfrequencyradio.com/signup or by making a donation at truthfrequencyradio.com/donate.
For less than $4 a month, you can ensure that TFR continues broadcasting for years to come. Real people, real radio.
Wherever you are, make it TFR.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The House has voted to move ahead on fast-track trade legislation. 217 to 212 vote sets up a crucial showdown vote tomorrow.
Ohio Democrat Marcy Kaptur says past free trade agreements have led to higher deficits and fewer jobs.
Is anybody here paying attention? Or are we all a part of the 1% and forget about the 99% who had to bear the brunt of this terrible, terrible outsourcing of jobs?
Texas Republican Pete Sessions.
A vote for TPA is a vote for jobs. It is a vote so that we can grow our economy.
The vote is expected to be very close.
SRN's Wally Hines reporting. Also at SRNnews.com, authorities are concentrating on a small rural area just a few miles from the Clinton Correctional Facility in upstate New York in their search for two escaped murderers still on the loose. For much of Thursday, hundreds of officers have been walking arms lengths apart through mixed terrain, including muddy areas, woods, and thick underbrush, looking for Richard Matt and David Sweat. New York State Trooper Jennifer Fleischman says authorities are deploying hundreds of searchers.
We have aircraft, we have K-9, we have tons of ground personnel. We're exhausting every single resource that we have at our disposal.
Authorities are asking residents in the area to stay indoors, keep their doors locked, and report anything suspicious. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder has signed a law letting a faith-based adoption agency with state contracts decline to participate in referrals that violate their religious beliefs. Snyder says Christian adoption agencies should be able to follow their religious convictions.
There are some of these organizations that have scaled back their services in other states over this issue of religious freedom.
Homosexual rights groups call the legislation government-sanctioned discrimination. On Wall Street, they're up by 39 points. The Nasdaq rose 6. The S&P advanced 4. Oil down to $60.77 a barrel. This is SRN News.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kristan H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
What up, guys? We are live here. It is Thursday, June 11th, live here on the Rundown Live, rundownlive.com. Mike Pachesny, Kristan Harris. We have a guest tonight, Kristan, don't we?
Sure do. Josh Tolley, nationally syndicated talk show host, joins us here. He's actually from Wisconsin. He's a transplant out of Madison here, or near the Madison area. Anyways, I first met him actually during the Vernon Hirschberger raw milk trials, Mike, when they were trying to put him in jail for selling raw milk. You know, those evil raw milk salesmen that are out there.
Yes, that would be freedom to have the freedom to choose what kind of milk you drink, right? And we can't have that here in the land of freedom, right?
Right, and no raw milk. Actually, I've had raw milk before, Mike. It's actually pretty good. You can actually almost taste all the things that the cow drink, like the mushrooms and the different vegetation. It's fantastic. I'm not suggesting everyone go out there and buy raw milk. It's not for everyone. I just had the opportunity to try it, and it was really good. But yes, we're having Josh Tolley on. That was probably my first encounter with Josh. I think he's a great Guy, he's a great person as far as leadership development and being accountable for your own career and your own business and things of that nature. I'm really excited to talk to him. He wrote a book called Quit Your Job or Die, and things of that nature. So really excited to have Josh Tolley on tonight's show. But before I get into all that, Mike, I have to mention Josh Tolley might be the only guy that may have a better beard than you and me, Mike.
Yes, we both have beards, don't we? We all have beards these days.
It's Battle of the Beards on the Rundown
I
Live.
think it's a radio thing, although I know Josh is doing a lot of political advising and business leadership. I've wondered how they feel about the beard. If he has one, maybe it's more acceptable in the business world now.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, Mike. When I was working in retail as a manager, they made it very taboo to have a beard. In fact, I probably would have not gotten promoted if I did not shave my beard off. True story.
That was just a quick side note. There's just a controversy lately about the NHL and all the players having beards, and apparently they didn't want the players to have beards. So that's something that I guess is professionally frowned upon sometimes.
Well, you know what?
Facial hair.
You know what type of people wear beards, Mike? Those pesky constitutionalists.
I was going to say people that enjoy freedom, but
yes.
I'll also accept
freedom.
that.
You know what it is, Mike? People enjoy freedom, let their awesomeness escape from their face. That's what it really is.
Well, maybe it could have to do with, the top of our heads, too, because I can't really grow a lot out the top anymore. So.
Well, I agree. Mike and I have the ZZ Top thing going because we have bald heads. And,
yeah, we try, but it comes out only one direction.
But at least it still comes out. And
yes,
so Mike
for
and
now.
I like to show off what we still have here.
Yes. But I've often noticed that sometimes the individuals that have plentiful hair can't grow badass beards.
Well, you're right, Mike. It's usually really patchy, and it doesn't look good. And, we're blessed to actually have awesome...
It's going to be a beard fest today, is what Kristan is saying.
We're going to talk about beards.
No, we're not. We're not going to be talking about beards at all. We're not going there.
Probably not. No.
But no, it's going to be a good time with Josh. I'm interested to hear some of his leadership perspectives and stuff. It'll be a good time. We should probably get into the site real quick and talk about that before we bring him on, though.
Sure, guys. If you haven't had a chance to yet, check out the Rundown Live. You can find more about our guest, Josh Tolley, who's joining us in a few minutes on there, as well as other great articles on things like Bilderberg, which isn't happening, right? And questions like what's going on with NSA surveillance. So check out the Rundown Live. Share the articles on your Facebook and Twitter, the Stumble Upon and Tumblr and all those other forums you guys might be part of. Let people know to tune into the Rundown Live now. We're live Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. If you're interested in supporting what Mike and I do, check out Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access allows Mike and I to surf the internet anonymously. We can check our emails, we can download, do cool things like avoid Reddit bans and video game bans. It's $39.95. Covers not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 computers, guys. And it's a way to support this awesome broadcast and get something in return. Mike and I use it daily. And if you want to learn more about private internet access, go to the Rundown Live search bar, type in private internet access. Mike did an awesome high-ranking tutorial on private internet access. You can see how to use it and actually make a purchase that supports us straight from the tutorial there. If you like to listen to us live and you listen in the Denver area, tune into 90.7 Denver FM. Truth Frequency Radio. You'll get Mike and I and all the other amazing broadcasters that are syndicated through them. Popeye, Joe Joseph, Phoenix Rising, Kev Baker, and a bunch of other great people. Support Truth Frequency Radio. Check out their website, truthfrequencyradio.com. We're also available live on TuneIn Radio. You can follow us at the Rundown Live from TuneIn, or the really cool Rundown Live app we put out. The Rundown Live app is free. Mike and I put it out there for you guys to use, and that's right. You don't have to pay a dime for it. We make it easy for you guys to spread the message of liberty and freedom by downloading this app on your friends' phones, or you can actually download all our past podcasts from the app as well and contact us via email or Facebook or Twitter. So check it out. Google Play, iPhone App Store, Amazon, Windows, Stitcher, we're on Spreaker, you name it. If we're not on the platform, let us know. You can also send us emails at showtips@therundownlive.com. Today on today's show, if you'd like to get in contact with us or post some questions for Josh Tolley or that you'd like us to ask, you can access us through the chat, therundownlive.com/live. And there you'll be able to chat with Mike and I and many other people who join us daily there. I want to say thank you to our syndication, FPRN Radio, TFR, Liberty Talk FM, Liberty Movement Radio, and make sure you guys check us out on YouTube, The Rundown Live. We're accessible on there. We have limited edition stuff on there. Check it out today. Follow us on YouTube. So above and beyond that, I think it's going to be an interesting show today, guys. Josh Tolley, I can remember when I started my first business as kind of a hobby, and I think it's really important for people to realize there's other options than working a daily slave job. It seems like there's so many people out there that you talk to daily who are just unhappy with their day-to-day happenings, unhappy with their lives, unhappy with the situation that they're in, and definitely unhappy about their pay. We see people out there crying and hoping to get $15 minimum wage jobs out there. But the question I have to ask sometimes, how much are these people willing to do to really make $15?
Or what skills do you even have? You know, that's another thing. A lot of people, I think, get into business and realize, wow, I don't even have the skills to, keep this business running. So that's something I'm sure Josh gets into, and I'm sure we're going to ask him all about that kind of stuff. I know it's going to be interesting.
Well, I'm sure, and he's well-versed in everything from politics to relationships to business. He's talked on many different shows, and he's written many different awesome books. Josh Tolley is, like I said, a homebody from Wisconsin. He took part in the free and equal third-party debates that was televised nationally. He's a liberty advocate for freedom. He's talked on many different topics, and I believe we may have him with us. Josh Tolley, our homeboy from Madison. How you doing this evening? Welcome to the Rundown Live. Do we have Josh there?
Oh, thanks for having me. Pleasure being here. Sorry about that. I had a connection issue for a second.
No, it's all right, Josh. It's our pleasure to have you on, man. It's our first time talking with you, so it's definitely good to hear from you, man. You've been doing the talk radio circuit for a while, and now you're really doing a lot of speaking engagements, working with a lot of business individuals, and I'm really interested in what you've been doing since you've kind of shifted gears from talk radio. You're still doing the talk radio stuff, but now you're kind of really hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, actually, it started out with business, then it added talk radio, and then it continues to be business training and books. What happened was I started my first business at 18, right after high school, and it was a total failure. I was so shy, I couldn't order a hamburger from McDonald's, man. It was terrible. So my first business failed. Learned to get over the shyness and the fear. The second business was a failure too. But I knew entrepreneurship was the answer, so I kept going, kept trying. Third business got a little success, and somewhere about 21, 22 years old, I was helping a couple, probably in their mid-30s. They had a few kids. I was helping this couple get their business up and running, and I remember one night we were sitting around their table. This was actually in Wisconsin. And they started crying. And I look at them and I'm like, why are you crying? Because at 21, 22 years old, you're in business just for money. And they're crying, both of them right in front of me. And they said, because we've been praying for something. And it's then that I realized that so many people go to bed at night thinking, is this all life is? And then they wake up every morning thinking, oh man, I have to do it again. And that just wasn't acceptable to me. I hated seeing people in that condition. And everybody was doing this, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get good grades, get a job, and that should be the solution and answer for life. And I'm looking around me in this world, and I'm thinking, well, that can't be. I mean, that's way too standardized for millions of individual, unique people. And it doesn't work. I remember I was reading a copy of the Forbes 400, and I noticed that one thing that all of them have in common, none of them are employed. And I thought, well, wait a second. If there's like 280 million people, because that's what there was back when I was in high school, if there's 280 million people in this country, and we're all being told, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a good job, and that'll be the answer, how come none of those people have ever ended up on this list? And it wasn't my goal or dream to be a billionaire or anything. I'm still way, way far away from a billionaire. But I knew that there was something missing in the employment equation, and that's what really kicked it off. So I developed a really unique approach to logic, reason, and strategy, and that turned into, can you take that same approach that you put in business and apply it to politics and religion and relationships, and it just kind of snowballed into what we have now, and it's 2 books out right now, 5 more coming, and a nationally syndicated show that airs Monday through Friday, 9 to 11.
That's funny that you mentioned that people are unhappy in their situations. I think every day I see people who go to jobs that they hate and they're miserable, but they're real ambivalent. They just want to collect a paycheck. They don't want to go any further in the company, and they're just miserable, man. It's like they're drones. They go in, collect the paycheck, and they have this routine. They don't change it, and they never look behind the curtain to see what else there is out there for them, Josh. I don't know why this is. Why do you think people are so ambivalent?
Well, because we have been taught not to be creative, and then we've been taught to lie to ourselves. When I go and do a business presentation, I take with me a 7th grade textbook from 1929. Now, in 7th grade, you're 11 or 12 years old, right? So in 1929, this mathematics textbook, which is less than an inch thick and fits in my hand, the first chapter is how to hire employees. The second chapter is setting up retail distribution. The third chapter is shipping and receiving. And it's amazing how we taught entrepreneurship in the 20s. Well, now you go to 7th grade, and it's a textbook that's 3 inches thick, and it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of nothing but repetition, repetition, repetition. So by the time you get to high school, or by the time you graduate, you take an aptitude test. They tell you what careers you think you'd be good at. You've been trained to kind of be a drone to go get a job. We think the only way to make money is by the hour. So we go out into this career field, and of course it's not going to work. And your soul isn't happy. I mean, you know you were meant for something better than this. But then we lie to ourselves, and we tell ourselves, well, I love what I do. And that is a straight up lie. Now, there might be some exceptions out there, but with 350 million people now, I can guarantee you 99% of the people out there do not love what they do. If I gave you $5 million and a year to live, most people would not say, well, I'm going to spend more time at work. Liar. You would spend more time with your wife, your kids, your friends, traveling. Those are the things you love. But because we don't know how to get those things, we've convinced ourselves that we love spending 30, 40 hours a week working. And I'm sorry, I just couldn't believe that. So I started talking to people who said the same thing. You know, Josh, I go to bed every night thinking, is this all my life is? And the funny thing is, it had nothing to do with the level of income. If it's 30 grand, they felt that. If it's 180 grand, they felt that. I even talked to the man who owns the largest privately owned bookstore chain in the entire country, makes millions of dollars a year, and he feels the same way. And it really comes down to knowing you're not doing the things that allow you to really do what you love. So, and then I started looking into this even more, and I wrote my first book, and initially I titled it Quit Your Job or Die, Discover the Importance of Self-Employment. And that was supposed to be the working title, and then I'll change it when it actually gets published. But by the time I got to publication, it turned out to be absolutely true. You are 5 times more likely to have a heart attack between 6 and 10 a.m. on Monday morning than any other day of the week. If you're under 40, odds are you will die at work. Employment is the number 1 cause for divorce, number 1 cause for affairs, number 1 cause for drug use. Stress is the number 1 cause for all illness. The number 1 cause of stress is your financial woes put upon you by your job. If you are employed, you're 40 to 70 times more likely to commit suicide. Suicide is now outranks traffic fatalities when it comes to cause of death in this country. The number 1 reason for suicide is financial hardships, and we don't teach this. So then we go out into the marketplace, we get a job, it doesn't work, so we turn around and we blame politicians, or worse yet, we blame rich people and say, well, it's the 1%'s fault, as if that has some credibility to it.
Well, yeah, and I think that everyone's always looking for a scapegoat or somebody to blame in these situations. It's always somebody else's fault. It's so much easier to do these things and take accountability for your own actions, pucker up and figure out what you want to do with your life. I find that most people are happy doing what they're passionate about. I've always pursued careers and things that I found that I love and joy for, and I've learned that if you do things you love, it's like not working a day in your life. Well, I mean, there's little work, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. But we don't teach kids that. See, when a kid comes up to you and they're 4 years old and they say, Mommy, Daddy, what can I be? Or even if it's a stranger, it doesn't even have to be your kid. If they come up to you and say, Sir, what can I be? You're going to look at them and say, you can be whatever you want to be. And we teach them to dream. So they ask questions like why and how. But then as they get to be like 15, 16, 17, and they say, what can I be? You say, well, what did the aptitude test say? So we actually teach them not to do what you just said. And what we need to do, instead of trying to find careers for everybody coming out of school, we need to ask the kids coming out of school, what do you want your life to be? And then find something that fits that, as opposed to doing something and then trying to make a life around it. And I actually teach this course about how to find the meaning of your life, and it's 4 simple steps, but we don't have time to cover it. But there is a process where you can figure that out. But I kind of want to go back to something I mentioned, which is this 1% thing, especially with the Bilderberg Group meeting this week over in Europe. There's this idea that it's the 1% fault. And while there is absolutely a ruling elite, we're talking about less than 8,400 people in that group, 1% of 350 million, though, is 3.5 million. And I can guarantee your listeners that 3.5 million Americans did not meet at Denny's last night to conspire against them. The reason why there's a wealth gap in this country and there's a 1% is because that 1% is actually the top 5, but that top 1% can stay ahead of the inflationary wave. It wasn't a conspiracy, it's just math. Now, are there conspiracies? Are there, people who want to ruin things like the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes? Yes, absolutely. But for the vast majority of wealthy people in this country, they didn't plot against you. But let's say, for example, you have a job and you're 19 years old and you're making $20 an hour, right? Well, 10 years from now, you have to make 40 in order to have it equal 20. And there's no job on the planet that is going to give you a 10% raise every year at work. It just is not going to happen. However, businesses can grow at more than 10%. So just like if we were out surfing and a wave comes, and that's the inflationary wave, the person who's self-employed has the ability to paddle with the wave and then ride it and stay ahead of it. The employee can't. And we see a lot of people, both on the right and the left, talk about this income gap and say, well, you know what the problem is 30 years ago, the difference between the CEO and the average employee was only 30 times the pay. Now, 30 years later, it's 300 times the pay. Well, that's exactly what it should be, actually, when it comes to math. Now, I don't think that's what it should be when it comes to us. I don't want that to be the case. But what I'm saying is we have an employment-based economy, and there's no way an employment-based economy can survive past 3 generations. And I get it. No political party is telling you this. Bernie Sanders is not going to tell you this. Paul Ryan's not going to tell you this. But the reality is 3 generations ago, we were coming out of the New Deal. It worked for that group. The next group, their children, the baby boomers, it kind of worked for. Some of them have pensions and most of them don't. Some of them own their own home, but there's this thing called reverse mortgages. So it kind of worked for them. Now we're in the 3rd generation, and we're seeing a complete disaster when it comes to income-based or employment-based incomes. And that's why it's so important to get this message out there, because as long as you think it's some sort of cabal against you from the guy who owns the movie theater down the street, you will always be on the losing end. And again, that's not to say that there's not 8,300 people who are conspiring, but it's certainly not this other situation. And what amazes me is how many people who are opposed to the wealthy being wealthy Most of them are employees. Well, if you just step back and say to yourself, wait a second, if 5% of this country are the people with the wealth, and the 99% of that 5% are self-employed, there might be a clue there, and go become self-employed.
Yeah, Josh, I think you mentioned a bunch of awesome topics there.
Definitely.
You mentioned earlier about education. I have a question. What about Common Core teaching our children to be corporate consumers? And why do you think entrepreneurship isn't being taught like it used to be?
Because entrepreneurship empowers the people. Free enterprise is the fuel for freedom. It always has been, it always will be. As long as progressives and liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans can keep the conversation about which side provides the most jobs, and as long as you're concerned about your hourly wage as opposed to creating your own income, you will always be abused. That's why the South lost. The South lost the Civil War not because they didn't have enough people or anything like that. They lost because they didn't have the free enterprise that the North had, which allowed them to fund everything. And if you really don't like the way the world is going, then start a business, because it allows you to create wealth. And yes, there's red tape. Yes, there's regulation. I get it. There's all these things, and maybe we can dig into some. But when you really think about it, there's a guy in prison. Any prison you go to in the country, there's a guy in there who can get you a candy bar, a girly magazine, cigarettes, whatever. And if he can be an entrepreneur in an 8x8 cell, you cannot tell me you can't find an opportunity, even with all the red tape and regulation.
They could even get you illegal narcotics in there, Josh.
Absolutely. But that's my point. That's absolutely my point. But so many people here say, well, I can't be an entrepreneur. There's too much red tape. Yeah, you know what? If you're trying to start a bank or an insurance company, yes, tons of red tape. But I've helped so many people start businesses, and the total red tape expense might be $75 or $400. And you can actually then start earning your own income and controlling your time and your money.
It sounds like, to me, a motivational thing. Like, people aren't motivated enough to actually take this risk, because it is kind of a risk for these individuals to go against what they have been taught. They've been taught that they have to work this amount of hours and to get their house and get their car, and
or to go on vacation.
Right, they have to go to work, and to do something different like start a business, that's a risk. You have to think outside the box. You have to have a skill or an idea, and it takes people out of that comfort zone where they know, oh, if I go to work 40 hours a week, I'm guaranteed a check. Yeah, is it not enough to pay the rent and for my food and for my children? Yeah, I'll just deal with it, because it's guaranteed. And I think it's a motivational problem.
Well, and it's also a problem with reality. Because the reality is that, yes, 83% of small businesses fail. That's what I do, is I help coach businesses so they don't fail. And yeah, it is true, 83% of them do. But according to the American Banking Association, 98% of employees are dead or broke by their 65th birthday. So just by trying entrepreneurship, you automatically raised your odds, even if it doesn't work. So it goes back to that whole idea of, well, I have to go get a job, but then at the same time, you'll complain about these multinational corporations ruining jobs. Well, that's hypocrisy. Get out of it, start your own, and create your own income. And it's not like there's a finite pie. Yes, there's a fiat currency that we need to fight. Yes, there's a tax code we need to fight. All of that stuff is real, but we cannot fight it if we're an employment-based economy. And that's why the Federal Reserve was tried 2 other times before it succeeded in 1913, and it was defeated. Because prior to the 1913 Jekyll Island scandal, they tried this twice, and Americans were then based on entrepreneurship. So they had the power to defeat it. Well, then in 1913, after the Industrial Revolution and the assembly line invention of 1903, we started getting more and more employees, so they tried it again. And employees need inflationary regulation. Employees need, deflation protection. So all of a sudden, even though they did it illegally, it was embraced because it was sold and employees needed it.
Josh, we're about to go to break here. I didn't mean to cut you off, but make sure you guys keep hanging out. TruthFrequencyRadio.com. We're hanging out here with our guest, Josh Tolley. You guys can check out his website, JoshTolley.com. 3 short minutes. Hang out with us, TheRundownLive.com.
The sneakery of the Federal Reserve, guys.
Hey everyone, it's Mark Sargent from Strange World, broadcasting live every Saturday evening, 8 to 10 Eastern, 5 to
All right, we
7
got 3 minutes, Josh, just so you know.
All right, how's the connection? Is it good?
Yeah, you're good on my end. On my audio from you is perfect right now.
Yeah, you sound great, bro.
Good. Am I talking too fast? I'm trying to get a lot of information.
It's very informative, bro. We don't want to interrupt.
Right,
you.
I'm listening, and that's why we got you.
When you're hot, we don't want to cool you down. That's So.
Rock on.
If there's a topic you want us to cover or guest you would like to see interviewed, please email msargent23@comcast.net. So please join us and tell your friends about Truth Frequency Radio, the leader in real radio programming, bringing you quality, cutting-edge broadcasts from around the world.
Chinese police are investigating the apparent suicides of 4 young siblings, ages 5 to 13, who have been left alone by the parents in a poor region in the southwestern part of the country.
State media report they've been abandoned by their mother 3 years ago and that their father had left the village to look for work. The siblings reportedly dropped out of school and were left to fend for themselves. This case will once again raise troubling questions about the care of millions of children left behind in China's villages as their parents migrate to the cities to find jobs.
BBC correspondent Martin Patience reporting from Beijing. A federal appeals court in Washington says it will not block net neutrality rules set to go into effect Friday. The rules prevent broadband companies from manipulating traffic and charging internet tolls. The ruling is a setback for the industry, but the litigation against the rules will go on. This is SRN News. 2 U.S. senators stepping up an effort to get Congress to officially authorize the war against ISIS.
The effort by Senator Jeff Flake and Senator Tim Kaine comes even as the White House prepares to send more troops to Iraq as part of the fight against ISIS. In fact, Senator Kaine tells reporters the president's announcement underscores the need for the authorization of the use of military force, or the AUMF. The proposal comes 10 months into the war against ISIS, with little action from Congress regarding any official authorization. Meanwhile, a group of Senate Democrats wants to attach a ban on using ground troops in the fight against ISIS with limited exceptions. The ban would be part of the annual defense authorization bill. Linda Kenyon, SRN News, Capitol Hill.
The film world's mourning the loss of 2 famed British actors today. Sir Christopher Lee, perhaps best known as Saruman in the Lord of the Rings movies, died at the age of 93, and Ron Moody, best known as Fagin in the movie Oliver, passed away at the age of 91. More details at srnnews.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington.
Thank you, Keith. Bring us in, Kristan.
Strange World with Mark Sargent. Saturdays on Truth Frequency Radio.
Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kristan H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
The rundown.
TheRundownLive.com. We are here talking to author and fellow Wisconsin radio show host Josh Tolley. We've been talking to him about freedom and self-empowerment of being your own boss. We discussed a little bit about the gap between the wealthy and the poor. And it sounds like a pretty good idea, Josh, to start your own business, as long as it's not a lemonade stand in Texas. And try, you hear about that one?
Oh yeah, and see, and that leads into another great point. You know, what I hear from a lot of freedom-loving people is, well, Josh, the ruling elite, the politicians, whatever, they pass all these regulations to try to keep us from starting businesses. We need jobs. That would be like being a cow, being livestock, and telling the farmer, well, being free is a little too dangerous. There's regulations, there's fences to prevent me out there. I'm just going to stay in my pen and have a good, secure job. Why do you think the farmer wants you in your pen? The same reason they don't want you starting a business. Because starting a business actually empowers you, whereas it being an employee only empowers them. So when you're out there saying, oh man, down with the ruling elite, down with the two political parties, oh, wait, I want a job and I want $15 an hour minimum wage, you are literally shooting yourself in the head. Now, let me give you an example. I came up with an article called The Practical Poverty Level. I came up with it about 4 years ago when I started my show, which, by the way, I also have in my book, Evangelpreneur. You can get Evangelpreneur anywhere books are sold. Grab a copy. The book is so good, we recently had a lady read it and bought 40. She bought a case of them. She bought 40 of them just to start handing out to strangers. But anyway, this article that I wrote 4 years ago, I also put in the book. And it's called The Practical Poverty Level. This will rock everybody's socks, man. What I did is I took the 12 most common expenses that people have in their life as a single person. And then I took the national averages for each of those 12 things. And this is what I came up with. The national average, again, so your area might be a little lower, your area might be a little bit higher, but just listen to the list. Rent, $1,000. Car insurance, $144.66. Cell phones, $73, I wish. Utilities, $264.33. Cable and internet, $100.63. Food, $332. Gas, $220. Car payment, $466. 10% savings for retirement. Well, we're all doing that, right? $395. College loan payment, $575. Life insurance, $33. Health insurance, because it's a law now, $402. Now, there is nothing excessive on that list. I did not take you to Tahiti on vacation. You didn't even buy a flat screen television. Nothing excessive on this list. That list right there is $70,000 a year. $70,000 to be broke in the United States. And you might be saying to yourself, well, I don't have a car payment. Great, then I'll take out the $466. You still need $60,000 a year to be broke. And this is the thing that people don't realize. This is the thing that liberty lovers don't realize. It's the thing that progressives and conservatives don't realize. Because for generations now, we've been raised to be cattle. We've been raised to think, well, I need a good job. I need to make X amount of dollars per hour. And as long as you're having somebody else sign your paycheck, it doesn't matter how much you make. You are captive.
Well, that's what it comes down to. They want you to be a slave to the system. I wonder where taxes lie on expenses. I wonder how much we pay in the taxes every year from what we make. It's got to be close to 40 or 50% by the end of the day. You know, you got tax on roads and tax on smokes, and if you drink, tax on booze, and, you know, car tax and tax, stadium tax, like here in Wisconsin. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Josh didn't even list entertainment on there. So, I mean,
exactly.
I would throw alcohol and cigarettes and all the standard things people usually get under entertainment, which wasn't even included in the list.
And you better live someplace warm because you're naked. Clothes wasn't even on the list. And I mean, then this is the point. When we don't realize this, we're going to teach our kids, well, sweetie, go to college, get that college education, and make $40,000 a year. And in reality, you're saying, well, you're only $30,000 below where you need to be in order to pay for yourself to live. So what do we see? We see a record number of people, and this is all verifiable. You can Google it. We see a record number of people in their 30s still living with their parents. Why? Because of what I just explained. It has no bearing what you make if somebody else signs your paycheck. And this lie of, well, it takes money to make money, or you need a certain degree from college to start a business, absolutely false. The most successful business owners typically are the ones that did not go to college, by the way. And you don't need a lot of money to start a business. Matter of fact, I have helped a number of people start businesses, and through the creation of the business, it generated its own revenue to start itself. So there's no excuse really not to do this, and that's why I wrote the book of Entrepreneur.
Definitely interesting. I'd have to wonder, what are some of the steps people can start taking to kind of start leading themselves to get them on the right path? Because not everybody can just go out and quit their jobs, but I know people can start working on a plan while they're working for Menards or at, Lowe's or whatever their job is. I'm sure you have some dream or some idea in your mind. I'm sure there's got to be a path to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah, the first thing you need to do is you need to set up your vertical alignment. This is something that even all of the business books that I've been reading and teaching out of for 15 years now never talked about. So you need to set up your vertical alignment. What's important to you? And I have a process for that. But you need to set that up. And then what you do is you find a business that allows you to fulfill that. The biggest mistake business owners make, I think, is they have a dream business or they have something that they're good at or want to do, and that's the first thing they get into, which 9 out of 9 times turns out to be a terrible failure because it's wrong to start a business just because you're good at it or just because you have experience. There's a whole process of deciding where to in an industry to launch your business, what industry you should be in when you do, and that's why so many businesses fail. I mean, let's just be honest on the other side. 50% of all businesses in this country right now need a secondary source of income just to stay open. So it's not all sunshine and roses on the other side, but it can be. And what makes the difference is if you learn how to actually become an entrepreneur. There are 27 million small business owners in this country and very few entrepreneurs. Small business owners are the people who say, well, I'm a plumber. I've been a plumber for 10 years. I'll start a plumbing business and go out and plumb. Well, odds are he's going to fail. And just odds are, because that's the wrong way to start a business. Or, well, I love coffee. There's a lot of markup in coffee. I want to start a coffee shop. Odds are you will fail. That's the wrong way to start a business. So you have to do it smart as well. You have to make that investment. And what I find it really interesting, like, for example, I'm doing an event in Dallas August 1st and 2nd, and anybody listening can come. They can go to joshtully.com. There's a registration there, Dallas event, just register for it. But what I find really funny is once in a while, not very often, but once in a while I'll get somebody who complains about the price of coming to a seminar, right? Yet they brag about how much they spent on a college textbook. I mean, what I just told you is so true when it comes to the practical poverty level. And it's amazing to me how much we brag about how much debt we rack up in school. I had one lady tell me that she spent $100,000 to get her college degree to be a flight attendant. And I told her, I said, you don't need a college degree to do that. You know that, right? So now you're paying $625 a month for the next 20 years. You didn't need to do that.
Well,
and
even
she goes,
most,
well, no.
I was just going to say, even most retail jobs, Starbucks or Aeropostale or whatever in the mall, you need some kind of business associate's degree just to be a manager now.
And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But what's crazy is high-end jobs are starting to realize, wait a second, you don't. I taught a class that was full of MBAs, right? So MBAs all up in the class, and they went through my 2-day course. All of them, without exception, said, Josh, we didn't learn any of that stuff in our MBA courses. And what a lot of entrepreneurs like myself are finding is if you want to find really good business people, you don't go hire the MBAs. You hire the D students. And there's this expression that says A students work for B students work for C students work for D students, and D students own the company. And the reason that's really more true than not is because those D students had to be creative just to pass. The A students just followed a formula. Just tell me what to do, teacher, I'll do it, I'll replicate it. So then when they go out into the real world, all they know how to do is replicate. The D student got creative in anything that they do in order to succeed. So really, what you need to do is you need to start addressing the fact that at some point in your life, you have to start becoming an entrepreneur, whether that's part-time at first, on the weekends at first, at nights at first, whatever it happens to be. But it's the only way for you to get control of your family's future again, and it's certainly the only way that we restore liberty in this country. You cannot have a revolution, peaceful or otherwise, without financing. You just can't do it. So you need to embrace free enterprise.
I'm interested in, some more reasons why businesses fail. You mentioned, if you've been an experienced plumber and you go out and start a business, you're likely to fail. What are some of the reasons, businesses tend to fail in your experience?
Well, one of the reasons is they put their business at the wrong point of launch. So let's say you wanted to be a plumber. Well, where do all of the other plumbers who quit their job and become plumbers, where do they put their business? In the same spot, meaning they all get a truck, they get their wrenches out, and they all get plumbing jobs. So instantly when you start, you just started your business at the busiest part of entry in your industry. Instead, you should say to yourself, hey, wait a second, there are already 30 plumbers in my town. What if I become a plumbing trainer? What if I become a plumbing wholesaler of parts? What if I consolidate these plumbing companies into 2 or 3 companies? What if and you know what I'm saying? There's like 30 or 40 other ways to get involved in plumbing industry without getting a truck and a wrench and going out and doing service calls. But because we're so programmed due to school and employment, we just think that, I'm a plumber, I need to go plumb. Or I cook, I need to start a restaurant. When in reality, there's hundreds of other things to do. The other reason why most businesses fail is they don't have the skill set to go forth. And you might be thinking, well, Josh, I thought you just said we didn't need a college degree. Absolutely. A college degree cannot teach you the skill set you need. And there's a reason why, not to downplay anybody who went to college, but if you think about it, all the college courses have to be applicable to all the students, and all the professors need to grade it, which means everybody's learning the exact same thing. It's not a skill set. It's being able to recite what you were taught. And when it comes to skill set, what I do is I tell the students who attend my courses, I say, okay, everybody focuses on the mechanics of business, your business plan, your SBA loan, your build-out costs, all the mechanical stuff. And we focus on it because it's easy, and most business trainers don't have a depth of knowledge to teach you anything but this. But in reality, that's just the mechanics. And if you had a 15-year-old daughter and she's saying, Mommy, Daddy, I'm learning how to drive, well, if she's saying Mommy and Daddy at 15, you have bigger problems. But if she's 15 years old and she's saying, hey, Mom and Dad, I want to learn how to drive, do you sit her down and say, okay, sweetie, this is how an internal combustion engine works. There's a piston inside of a cylinder that goes down, and when it's in its downstroke, a mixture of gas and air come in. When the piston goes up, it compresses that mixture. When it gets to the top of its stroke cycle, the ignition fires off a spark through the spark plug. It bursts into an explosion, which pushes the piston back down. That turns the shaft. That then in turn gets transferred to the transfer case, to the transmission, then to the wheels, and that's how the car works. Here's the keys, have fun on your road trip. The answer is of course not. She'd crash and die 5 blocks from home. But that's what we do with business. We teach the mechanics of business. What I do is I teach the driving aspects of business, how to get creative. What does branding have to do with marketing? What does marketing have to do with leadership? What is a profit partner and how do I get one? How do I make the most out of networking events? How do I find right suppliers? How do I influence my supply chain? Do I work with family? Do I not? If so, how do I do either one of those? And I go through about 38 parts of business that no business course is going to teach you. And we turn those business owners into business drivers. We turn them from small business owners into entrepreneurs, and the results have just been astronomically phenomenal.
I think it's some... Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, it's definitely interesting. You mentioned a lot of interesting things. A lot of people seem to go into business with family, and I'm sure it's both sides of the coin. You could be successful with family, but it depends on the family and what their experiences are, what their skills are. So, I mean, I think that's really where the logic and the reasoning comes in. You know, you're not just going to start a business with your grandma because she's your grandma. Your grandma has to have something to offer to the business.
Well, and not only that, you have to have the proper perspective. So let's say you are going to start a business with family. It can work. It really can. But if it's going to work, then everybody needs to know that there is a role and there's a place for what position they're in. It cannot be a free-for-all and everybody's the CEO. And too often with business startups, that's what it turns into. Everybody thinks, okay, well, we're doing this as a family. Everybody's going to get wealthy and successful. Everybody wants to make decisions. And that is a recipe for disaster. If it stays in a vertical sort of hierarchy situation, then you can have success. But the important part to go along with that is whatever situation you have at home, don't carry it into the business. So, for example, if you're in a marriage and, every marriage they can do whatever they want, but let's just say, for an example, in the marriage, the husband's the head of the house and the wife isn't. But then at work, the wife owns the realty company and the husband just does the signs and the setup for the showings. Well, that's fine, but you need to keep those roles separate, which means back at home over dinner, the wife can't be like, hey, did you make sure you went by the Petersons' residence and put up the sign? You can't do that because now you're mixing those two worlds and people's roles start to get blurry, and that carries over and that turns into resentment, and then next thing you know, the entire business collapses. So you have to make an effort to say, nope, these are the parameters, this is everybody's jobs, we're going to stay inside of our jobs, family life is family, business is business.
Well, that's hard to separate the two for some people because they're passionate and they just can't handle it. But I think that's very interesting. You mentioned all those things. I have a real quick question for you, Josh. Is there a possibility to start a business without getting a loan these days?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, in a bad economy like this, never start a business with a loan. Never. There are so many other ways to fund and start and create a business. And don't fall for this using other people's money line that was popular in the 80s and the 90s. Just don't do it. I teach a principle called starter businesses. Regardless of what you have, whether it's $1, $100, or $1,000, whatever it is, whatever you have available to you right now, you can start a business. It doesn't mean that it's the business of your dreams. It doesn't mean that it's the business that's going to, let you travel the world. But let's just do a real life example. Let's say your dream is to own a bed and breakfast in Vermont, and it's going to cost about $800,000 to really do this, to get the home, get the property, market it, all that sort of stuff. You don't have $800,000. So instead, let's say you start one of the starter businesses that I outline in the book, or one of the thousands of other ones that we give away on the show, and you start a starter business. And that gives you the freedom to get out of your job and start sticking away $2,000 to $3,000 a month towards your bed and breakfast. And you might be thinking, well, Josh, that's awesome. That's great. You get out of your job. You get out of the dangers of being employed, which is awesome. But Josh, that's still not $800,000. It's going to take me a long time. Great. But if you're keeping $2,000 a month, in 12 months, you can start another business, a bigger business. Or you can start partnering up with other business owners to go in together and buy the bed and breakfast debt-free and have one of you appointed as the one who runs it. I mean, there's so many millions of cool creative options, but unfortunately, just like in school and just like employment, we think, start a business, okay, get a loan. No.
It's like moving backwards almost. You get in the hole as soon as you started.
Exactly. You are placing yourself in bondage. You are absolutely placing yourself in bondage. And now you need the business to succeed or something bad happens. Whereas if you start a starter business, you start that business and it fails, nothing bad happens. You can start another different one next week. I know a guy who actually wrote the foreword for my book. His name's Terry Felber. He wrote the foreword for Evangelpreneur. And he started 16 or 17 businesses before he finally got to the one that worked. And because he didn't take out debt to do it, he could afford, because it didn't take money, he could afford to try again and become successful. When you go out and you get $1 million loan to start, a McDonald's franchise or something, if it doesn't work, life falls apart. You're in bondage. Which, just for contrast, I want to relate employment to prison for a second too. Because just because you're employed, don't think you're free. Where you live is determined by how much your boss pays you. Where you go on vacation is determined by how much your boss pays you. In prison, Think about this. In prison, you get personal phone calls. You don't at work. In prison, you get to go outside and exercise. You don't at work. In prison, you get visitors. You can't at work. In prison, you get conjugal visits, for goodness sakes. Try that at work. In prison, you can have a Bible or a Quran or whatever religion you want to have. You can't at work. And I get that you get to go home at night, but that's pretty much the only difference. You're more free in prison than in a lot of employment cases.
That's just amazing. It really sets in, when you kind of bring out these ideas. And Josh, we literally only have about 4 minutes left with you. So briefly, I just wanted to know, how do these skills and all the things you've taught us about the logic and the reasoning bleed over into like personal relationships, politics, and things like that?
Great question. I found that my entire foundation, my entire platform is based on logic, reason, and strategy. I love those three things. I think that allows us to become successful at whatever we do. When we look at relationships, there's a logical, reasonable, and strategical way to approach whatever problems you have. And same thing is true with politics. The reason why the show is so popular when it comes to politics is because of our approach, that independent approach, to look at something without that preconceived notion. And that's what it really boils down to. I think one of the blessings that I've had in life is that I was so bad at school. I was terrible at school. I got by the skin of my teeth. And I think that was a blessing because I never got sucked into the you have to think this way sort of mindset. And it allows me instead to think of creative solutions to pretty much everything.
I'm right there with you. I definitely struggled with that establishment hierarchy in school and following all their rules and repeating all of the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. It leads you to doing creative things, and I'm a little worried that our business might fail now, Kristan.
Well, to be honest, Josh... I was going to say, to be honest, Josh, I learned more from YouTube College probably than most textbooks.
Got to get that YouTube degree, right?
Yep.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. And if you want your business to succeed, guys, come on down to Texas. I'll give you a discount for August 1st and 2nd.
Oh, yeah, we might have to do that. We're a little far away, but maybe if you do one closer.
Might be realistic,
Amen. But beyond that, there's a huge truth to that. Somebody, because I also write fiction. And somebody said, well, Josh, you could go to college and get a creative writing degree and, learn how to write from a professor who hasn't done anything. And this is real life. I mean, this is a real example. So I could go there, spend $80,000 to $100,000, get a college degree from a guy who has never written anything in creative writing. Or I can go on YouTube, watch Stephen King, watch Dean Koontz, watch all these other mightily successful authors give the same amount of lectures because college is really only textbook and lecture, especially in a degree like that. Well, I can buy the textbooks on Amazon and I can watch Stephen King do the lecture. Which would I rather do? And one of them is actually free. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have the business skills to make it successful, which is why I teach my class. But from the nuts and bolts mechanical side of things, yes, YouTube College, man, it's absolutely unbelievable. And here's the awesome example of how this actually works. There you have those college professors who have degree upon degree who never publish anything, never become successful at anything. Now I just signed for my third book. I have 5 more coming out. I host a national talk show. It's turning into a television show, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying proof is in the pudding.
Yeah,
so there's a reality to this. Exactly. Exactly.
You're making it real. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Josh. We're just running out of time here. I want to make sure you can plug your events and where people can find out more information. The show goes really quick, and I know it's hard to pack in all that information, so where can people find out more?
The Josh Tolley Show airs Monday through Friday, 9 to 11. Check your local listings. You can go to joshtully.com. We're on the GCN radio networks. You can also go to gcnlive.com. And we're on TuneIn and iTunes and all those other sort of streaming things, too. The book, Evangelpreneur and Quit Your Job or Die, is available wherever books are sold. And you can attend the Small Business Big Solution Seminar in Dallas, Texas, August 1st and 2nd. I would strongly recommend that everybody come and bring your spouse, It has changed lives. It has saved lives. I kid you not. It has literally saved lives. So make sure you're there. August 1st and 2nd. You can register for that at joshtolley.com as well.
Thanks a lot, Josh.
Yeah, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
You too, man. We'll be in touch, and we'll definitely have to get you back on sometime. Thanks a lot, man. Make sure everybody goes out and checks out joshtolley.com. You know, he has an idea for success, and a lot of people out there are struggling, Kristan.
Well,
but we're just out of time, Kristan, so make sure you guys stay tuned. Truth Frequency Radio, Phoenix Rising's coming up next. If you're listening on Truth Frequency, we're not going to be on tomorrow, but you can visit our website, therundownlive.com.
You guys check out Josh Tolley. Thanks again for coming on the show. We'll see you guys next week. TheRundownLive.com. Send us your guest requests, show tips at TheRundownLive.com.
Love you guys in the chat. Check out the news on the site.